As I stated, our Windows security settings. Overall, securing Windows itself and its data for our clients is ultimately essential. We need to understand exactly what is needed when Windows is using different types of access, share permission, drives, files, folders can be granted, even the actual groups and the structure that we have must remain intact. Usually we have Mac, as we learned, we have rule based, we have um, can somebody else tell me what type of other securities before I name all the answers? We said Mac, we have rule based, the one that a lot of people understand, which is discretionary. And lastly, my understanding would be what majority of people know is role based. In other words, usually you'll see a marketing group, finance group, IT group, and you just throw all the IDs into those specific groups, for instance. In this session, we're going to learn the different types of users access, define and understand NTFS, and the provisions that it offers. We're also going to learn about our single sign-on. Our ultimate goal, obviously, is to be able to define the user types of access. And where did my window go? Sorry about that, guys. Give me a second. Overall, our main objectives, as we were alluding to, was to be able to define the different types of user access, define NTFS and how it intends to address the security threats compared to our old FAT that didn't take care of that. Hey, look, I'm Orion, man. I didn't know. What is it? Boy, I didn't know it. Compare and contrast the various NTFS file permissions, your single sign-ons, BitLocker, EFS. As we hopefully read and understood by now, there are different types of users and the access accounts groups supporting Windows. Specifically, you have, as always, unfortunately, the administrator. That's the same as root, right? Obviously, the majority of times there is this account and then the next account that I'm going to mention, which should be disabled. We should always disable these two known accounts, which is called administrator. I keep emphasizing the or because there's administrators with an S, and that's the group. We obviously don't disable that. As for the administrator, we disable him and we disable the actual guest account. That is the other one that we need to ensure that we do not allow. We do obviously, again, allow maybe a guest group and a power users group. Can anyone tell me what a power users group does compared to administrators group?
Uh, Maybe they have access to printers.
For instance, they may have access, as you stated, to printers. They may have access to backup, but they won't have access to full things, for instance. There may be specific things that are assigned to those power users instead of being a regular user. Thank you. As for your new technology file system, NTFS, this is the file system that Windows uses to be able to store and retrieve files using obviously their new security methods. It also brings other features like encryption. At the same time, we need to understand the several types of settings and permissions for our drives, files, folders. We need to understand that there is inheritance or non-inheritance, whatever we choose within these folders. NTFS permissions apply to both local and network users and are based on the permissions that you decide to grant to each group, or sometimes if it's discretionary to each user, regardless obviously where they're connecting from. We saw a moment ago that we were looking at Pepe's file, pepe.tix file. The lowest, I believe we said, was to be, well, technically the lowest would be able not to do anything, right? But we're trying to grant permission. So let's look at what was the lowest one. And if I recall correctly, the lowest one was to be able to at least read, right? The next one would be now that you're able to write. Now, read and execute would be your next level. And your next one after that would be actually one that's technically lower when it comes to folders. And that would be list folder contents. Because I could get rid of everything else and just give you list folder contents. And all you could do is see what's inside this mysterious bag. But you can't read any of the files. You can't copy any of the files. You just know that there's files there. The last few ones are obviously a little bit more close to administrative rights to an actual file that we said would be modified. And you have your full control. Full control should not be given to any user unless of obviously that is their folder. That is the user's folder, then they have full control. We never give everyone as a group, it's called everyone, full control. That just makes no sense. We might give them everything below, but we wouldn't give everyone, even if everyone needs to get into this folder, would we give everyone full control? Then there is the special permissions, which obviously is based on any of the ones that we said above. Questions so far before we proceed and dig a little deeper? Right, in the last area here, we're going to be obviously covering your single sign on. This obviously enables Windows users to be able to connect to multiple applications in a network at a given time. Most of you have probably used that already in the cloud as a common authentication method. You might use your Google, for instance, to be able to log on not only to your Gmail, but to your Google Drive, your Google Files, your Facebook. I don't know. I'm just giving you an example. I don't know if Facebook does that. I don't know what you young folks use nowadays to log in. But you get my points. There are even sometimes some weird sites that you're trying to get into, forums, who say, go ahead, log on with your Google ID. That's single sign on. You're just signing on with them. And that trust relationship allows you to log on to their network. There are many benefits for single sign-on features. Obviously, it reduces the actual password fatigue, where the user has to start remembering a whole bunch of passwords, and obviously, it does help from the controlling and ensuring that we retain the actual security complex throughout as an administrator. So if I chose whatever I chose, it will apply throughout. So complex security, age of password, how many history of password, all those features that I want to do, it's going to do. But at the same time, it's going to make it much easier, as we notice, because now it's only one ID and one password. Hence, that's one of the reasons why they came up with MFA. We understand that now we made a secure portal to be able to facilitate this process so that clear across the whole network in the intranet, not the internet, but or mainly most of these companies want it. Now you can just log on once and you can do all of that. But at the same time, for those laptop users and or anyone that's coming from outside, we want to make sure, is it really you? I understand you have a single sign on, but that's why MFA came into play, to make sure that you are you. It is obviously a save time when in reference to re-entering, just to authenticate to the next app, to the next app, to the next app. It's gonna obviously reduce a lot of the IT calls to the help desk, just because I it's happened, trust me. And when those places that you have no single sign-on, I guarantee when that 30-day or whatever that is, that 45-day cycle where everybody's starting to get into that same little groove, they changed their password, and since it's not single sign-on, they forgot the password to change it on another system, so they continue to try to log on with the new password onto that system, causing
Wait, so
obviously havoc.
I'm sorry, I have a question. So
Mhm.
how does that work with the 30-day thing and the single sign-on? So let's say it
No,
expires
I'm
in 30
sorry.
days. How do you?
And what I'm saying is, if you don't have single sign-on, right? What happens is now every single application has its own ID and its own password. What confuses the users is that IT always tries to facilitate the process in the company and gives you the exact ID name. As an example, for you, they might have given you AMR1 AAB. So every single system that you log into is AMR1 AAB. But now Windows decided that you need to change your password. You did. So that's the same as your email. That's the same thing as your IM. But now you go and you're trying to log into that internal system. You forgot what the password is. You keep on logging on with your Windows password as a user. Common issue. That's why you'll also find the issue that they're writing it down and they're putting it with a little post-it note here with all the different passwords. Hence, since this was going on and they know it's going to happen, Windows came up with the idea, or whoever else came up with the idea of single sign-on. Windows does have the capability for all internal networks to be able to do that. You also have it, like I said, in the cloud itself, using Facebook logins, using your Google logon, any of those websites that ask you to use another person to be able to authenticate yourself so that you can come into their network. Still single sign-on because you're only signing on to one system to get into many. Any other questions on single sign-on? So this obviously alleviated the help desk, those 30-day cycles whenever passwords were getting changed. Users obviously changed only one password, and it affected all the systems that they were going into. Other features obviously that we have is BitLocker itself or EFS. What's the variance between BitLocker and EFS?
BitLocker is for multiple files, and encryption file system is just per file.
Ooh, yes. Well, no and yes. The first one you were very close, and the second one, yes. It is many files because it's the whole disk encryption. BitLocker encrypts everything, including the boot. In other words, unless if you actually log on, will it turn it on and log on with the original computer? It will not turn on. What happens is that you take out this disk, put it into another computer, and now one trick is obviously if it's exactly the same model, the drive will not notice that NIC card's MAC address because it's the exact same model, same hard drive. I'm sorry, same everything, right? For it. So in that case, yeah, you moved it, but again, all it's going to do is going to allow it to boot, but you won't be able to get in because it's all encrypted until they log in. As soon as they finishes decrypting and everything and they log in, now if they actually just leave it open that way and maybe just lock it, now it's decrypted. And now you can get into that data. Versus EFS is every single file you have to choose which files you want to encrypt. The amount of time, obviously, to be able to get BitLocker up and running takes a massive time because of the fact that it is doing full disk encryption. As soon as it finishes that, every single other file that is added gets encrypted. As EFS, I said that you choose. That is a choice. As you said, it's just how many files you want to encrypt or not. Questions, doubts so far before we proceed? All right. So our behavioral skills for this would be needed is adaptability and personal responsibility. You need to be able to adapt to any given situation and security needs overall. And at the same time, we need to make sure we're personally responsible to ensure that the proper security needs and the least privilege method is being used at all times. As we note, there is going to be different types of users. we stated a group is a container that basically holds a plethora of users in there. These user accounts are created obviously in a different screen, and then you actually add them into the group. So whenever you're trying to actually facilitate this process, you just see here the default one, which is your administrators group. You have your users group, you have your guest group, and you have your power users group. Overall, you can create your own group. You do understand the users group is just a default group. If I put Pepe accounting group, this is still technically, if I give it only user rights, is a user group, but it is defining a role base. Now, anything that is for that specific group, I only need to add that group to the given file or folder. I don't have to put the 56 people that are in that department. All I have to do is just dump the people into the group. Questions or doubts on a group and the efficient way and why we would use it this way. This is the way. You do it any other way would be because of the fact that it is discretionary. Therefore, it's up to the user's discretion to add users willy-nilly to whatever they want. Otherwise, this would be the default for company situations. Any questions so far on groups or why? All right. Next area we have the administrator group. This guy is Pepe or Root, as we like to call him. He basically has and belongs to the administrators group. We should disable this guy. Administrator itself should be disabled. We should not disable administrator group. Anyone in this group has obviously full rights. So we always give admin rights to the administrator and dump all administrators into that group. They have even obviously possible to take control of any user's folder. So if Pepe happened to leave the company and Mikey is the administrators, he's inside the administrators group, he will be able to facilitate the process so that Josh in HR can be able to get whatever was inside that person's folder. Power user. This guy is a user that has read and write automatically to all, unless if you somehow take him out, right? This is able to also install. So now it's very close to an IT individual. Most likely, a lot of times, they give this type of permissions to your coders. Since the coders, you don't want them to have full control, but you do not want to keep on going back every time they're trying to do something with their software, for instance. This would be one of the users that you actually put in there. Obviously, you'll need to be able to ensure that they have specific rights to whatever folders they need, because sometimes they even have specific folders that they're trying to get to or drives. Any questions on the difference between an administrator and or a powers users group? The standard user is that he can read and write to their own, own. But they won't be able to modify any of the registry entries at all. They shouldn't be able to go into any of the critical stuff. And the majority of the times, if the policy's in there, they won't be able to even get into the actual control panel admin areas. As for guest, this one is very similar to users, but does not get any log files. Anything created to be in that, which should be inside the actual group guest group itself. And the only really reason that you want to do something like this will be for someone that maybe it's just limited access and you just want to go in there and let them do something for a little while. Otherwise, we would want to give a standard user or standard user. I guess would probably be not even a actual vendor would I recommend using guests, because there is no log files and there's a lot of stuff that's locked out for guests. Unless if you will go and circumvent the groups and give the groups what they shouldn't get. Questions? Alrighty then. So every version of Windows has one or two user groups already or management tools already included inside, obviously, the applet of user accounts and local user and groups. There's a one that we can go and add that snap in, or we can go into manage the actual computer and find that. Inside here, that seems to be the one with the family version, because we see here user accounts and family safety. Questions or doubts on configuring users, we should go into configure first our groups always before we proceed to even add users, right? Because simply all I got to do is just add a user and add that user to the group. Question. All right, UAC, the user account control. Obviously, this is intended, obviously, to help IT hopefully eliminate the majority of the viruses that are out there, Trojan horses, clickbaits, and who know what's. Unfortunately, if you lower this and hit never notify, it will never notify the users. We should be leaving this either on the high end and or the middle, but I would prefer the top. Then when against the policy of the company is the policy of the company, whatever they choose, and they get to actually choose their poison from always notify and all the way down to never notify. So who can tell me when does this pop up?
Creating new users.
Hmm, interesting. Not sure if it would.
Whenever you
Would
try
it?
to make changes like download stuff or things like that.
Yes. If you're trying to make major changes to the PC, it's going to ask you for the actual password. And I think you are correct. If you're trying to go and change things and you're not the admin user, you are correct. It will be asking you for a password. Sorry, I had to think about that since I'm usually admin. As a user, if you attempt to do any administrative, anything that an administrator can only do, it will obviously ask questions or doubts. Next feature is your actual parental controls. That obviously is again for your home version. You're able to actually control and monitor the activities. You can set what content they can actually see in the internet and what applications they can actually install, all based on whatever you call that. I never remember what that is, but for those that know about movies, PG, G, R, whatever ratings, Neiman ratings, I don't know, whatever ratings those are called. You can actually base it on the age, and it will do the TV content, movie content, and internet content, even games. Questions, doubts? You're ready. NTFS, their new technology file system. Obviously, this was introduced by Windows NT, yes, Windows New Technology, to handle the disk-based security issues that they had since these things were being hacked like crazy. Fat 32 was like a joke. Uh, Basically, they had to come up with something if they wanted to continue in the realm of the business PC. Obviously, a lot of the people that started going towards Windows and these servers that are coming out, you had to choose between Novell servers and all these other servers, yet these people didn't have one. I'm not sure if you knew that. Windows PC was first before Windows Server. Hence why a lot of people argue, why would I buy myself a Windows Server when again, their main thing is PC. They came up with NTFS as one of their main solutions to be able to obviously address the concerns with your files, your directories. At the same time, you'll be able to have the NTFS security that's actually built in compared to uh, your actual FAT32s and your FATs that didn't have real security, and you could actually convert without losing data. So you go to NTFS, but without actually hurting it, supposedly. Questions, doubts. Encryption was one of the features that obviously allowed it even go further. The capabilities that came out further also was a single sign-on. Now I don't have to log on to 50 servers anymore. I can go on to one domain server, log on to the domain, and every single server is going to let me in. Compared to that little website that I told you, this is what the main feature is, and what I'm talking about, what this Windows single sign-on is. You can get into any application or any server that is in the Windows domain, and you just sign on once. You authenticate. Doesn't authorize you anything. All it does, it authenticates you. You obviously have your actual permissions that then obviously control this, your file permissions or full permissions or directory permissions, however you want to say it. BitLocker itself was another great feature that came out later for full disk encryption in your EFS for your actual files. Shared file permissions. This was another great feature where you actually be able to file over the actual network. Now you could actually add groups that are from the domain itself for the local permissions of the servers. NTFS permissions protect all the way down with with inheritance to the whole hierarchy, or you could specifically stop the inheritance of NTFS to basically affect every folder that's in there. If you want to specifically have it for every user subfolder, so you might have an accounting major folder where everybody in accounting can get into, and then you have all these little subfolders in there for every person in there. Then you might actually add an extra group, would be maybe accounting's management group, where they can get into everybody's folder, but everybody else that just a regular person can't get into the other person's folder. That's how sophisticated NTFS came up, and it helps so much. Obviously, Linux has all these features, but they brought it into this realm compared to their FAT and FAT32 that they never had before. Questions or doubts? Within NTFS permissions itself, they fall into the major three categories. You either allow me to do something, deny me to do something, or you not allow me. Full deny means you won't be able to do anything. Not allowed is basically that specific thing you can't do. But full deny means you can't do anything at all. For instance, I can let you read, write, and execute, but I could just maybe do read and write, but not allow you to execute as an example. Permissions are set to a folder, as I stated, to inherit down through all subfolders, unless if you say no. The cumulative of itself means that if a user is a member of a group that actually has a set permission, then that member of the group can actually do the permission, be write, read, whatever it is that you decide to give, as long as that person's in that. At the same time, careful, especially when these people are moving from actual departments to other. Maintenance must be done in the case that you're about to add a user now into accounting, but you knew that they were maybe in marketing. Then, the, although no one asked you to remove them from marketing, you must ask, are they to still keep their marketing access? We need to understand users are users. So users will request what they need in reference to be able to do their job. But the rule states we should be doing least privilege. And therefore, it's our job to ensure is if that is so, you're coming over here, then I need to verify with the previous manager or supervisor to before I remove it, because maybe that person's still training somebody. I don't know what's going on, so I can't assume anything. I need to ask someone and ensure that they remove them from the actual folder if necessary. Within your actual NTFS, you do have the capability or to be able to copy a file that is assigned, regardless obviously who created it. Is if you do have permissions to actually read or write, you can copy it to wherever you want. A move file, though, when you move it, it actually inherits where it was from to where it's going. So wherever I throw, when I copy a file from Pepe's folder to Mickey's, it cares less about Pepe's. Whatever's in there in Mickey's folder, that's my new set of rules. Compared to when I move Pepe's folder inside Mickey, Pepe's rights are still intact. That's very dangerous. A lot of people love to move data when it comes to being administrators, and then they go and they move it to their folder on a server. Sorry, they'll copy it to a server and then they'll move it to the user's folder. Let me rephrase that. I've seen that a lot. So I copied it to the server under my folder that I have to be able to make my backups. And then I build a brand new computer for the actual user. And now I moved that whole folder into their computer. It comes with all of my rights because that's what it had on that folder. Does that make sense? Successfully, obviously, not letting the user to do their job, and they won't even be able to do anything in there. So be very careful in NTFS. There is a major difference between copy and move. Here we are. Your full control, as I stated before, you have full permission. I can become the owner. I can change anyone's permission. As for if I turn everything on prior to that, it only allows them to do the following. If you're able to read, it allows the user to view the contents of the file and to see the actual ownership and attributes. That's all they can do is just see. They can read. Now, when you combine read and execute, it actually does read and you can execute any file that's in there. I can actually open an executable file, an exe. Next is write. If you're able to write, it allows the user obviously to overwrite the file and change attributes, and you can see the ownership and permissions. Next is modify, which allows you to combine the actual read and execute with the right permissions. So if I hit modify, it is the same as going and hitting read, read and execute, write. But it also allows you to delete the actual file. So the other ones only let me read, execute, or write. But if I select modify, it allows me to delete the actual file or folder. Questions?
So in modifying this, you can do everything unless you can take the ownership.
You could delete the file, but you cannot become the owner or change the permissions, which is kind of funny. You can delete the file, but you can't change and say that you're the owner or take away anyone's permissions from the file. That's what modify gives you.
So what does execute do again?
Well, read execute allows you to see what's inside the folder. You can see all the files in there, and you can double click on an exe and it'll actually run it. You have to understand that read means that you can only read, so the file can't grow, the file can't change. When you double click on an executable file, it expands. In essence, it changes. Hence why the rule is called read and execute, because I want you to be able to use the program that I created, but I don't want you to write onto any of the stuff that's in here. Does that make sense?
So you
It's like
wait, hold.
power. For instance, let's say you don't want them to delete PowerPoint, right? So you would
Okay.
give them read and execute.
Oh,
Now
okay, I
they can
understand.
get into the folder, they can read the folder, and they can run PowerPoint. But they can't change the code on PowerPoint. They can't remove any of the DLL files, nothing that's inside that folder, but they can execute that actual program. They created
So
that. Go ahead.
so executing means kind of like more just like using a program.
Opening a program, yes, to open a
Okay.
program.
Okay,
That's all it
gotcha.
means. Execute only means that you're executing an exe file or opening a program.
Gotcha.
Yeah, an exe file is an executable file, and hence the word why they say ability to execute. And what happens is, like I stated, since you ran that actual file, it expands and creates files. Those expansion and files would technically be that you're writing, and you're not allowed to write. Hence, that's why they came up with this read/execute, so that the folder and permissions allow you to only do that. You can only do that. You can't change any other files. Any other questions, doubts? I think I heard Fadil earlier. Any other question, Fadil? I think you had a question.
Yeah, I asked about modification. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, thank you. All right, here we are. Specifically for one file itself, we never ever not touch this. Leave him alone. He's gotta always have full control. You have to understand that's kernel. If we remove kernel's access to the system, then how is he going to do anything? The everyone group, we should never give full control. The system group should always have full control. Then you have your other person here, but if you'll notice, this seems to be inside the actual users folder, which is Antonio. Inside Antonio, you'll notice that you have your system, you have your actual administrators group as your usual, two groups who should have full control of a given area. Then in here, you'll notice that Antonio, since it is his specific folder, he has specific rights. And in this case, most likely he does have also full control of a given file. As we saw earlier, we can actually edit the permissions. We can add somebody to a given file. So can you guys still see my desktop or no?
Yep.
Yes,
See the
yes, yes.
PowerPoint. Yeah.
All right, let's go back over here to Pepe. Can you see him or no?
Yeah, we see it now.
All right. Pepe, come on over here. So there is a difference between edit and advance. We'll notice here that on edit, it's pretty plain. It only allows me to do the default stuff that we'll see with that specific file. I can do the actual full control all the way down to special missions. If I go to advance, it's a little bit different. It does still allow me to go into here and add thing, but I can disable inheritance. I can change the actual owner. I can share. I can, what was this? Auditing, that's not major things. That's just for auditing purposes. But the ones that you need to understand is disabling inheritance. You can still add users through here, and you can actually change or share. questions, or doubts? Now, when I disable inheritance, what it will do at that moment, it's going to ask you, would you like to remove all the inheritance? You said you don't want any more money from your daddy. Fine and dandy. Do you want me just remove that paycheck that you're getting daily? Or would you like to just keep on receiving anything and then whatever other income you have you want? In other words, do you want to remove everybody? Fine, remove everything and go ahead and add as you like, whatever it is that you want. Or you can actually go and say to remove or disable the inheritance, but I want to keep everything in here. And now whatever I change only changes this given folder and or file, but it won't change all the actual subfolders or the actual parent folder. Questions? All right, enough about Antonio's stuff. We'll go now to the actual directory permissions. It was slightly different. The only little different is what we're going to see here is the list folder itself. So as we saw before, full control allows you to take permission all the way up to ownership of a given folder or directory now and its contents, everything below. Read would allow the user to navigate to the entire directory structure, all of the subdirectories, list the contents and files in the directory, and see who the owner and attributes are. Read and execute again is the same thing. You're able to list all the full content and it allows you to run executables. Now, write is to allow you to actually user to create new entries in a folder as well as change the actual attributes of a given folder. List folder allows the user to view the contents of a directory and to navigate through its subdirectories. Can someone tell me what's the difference between read and list folder?
One, wait,
It seems like one allows you to go deeper than the other, I guess.
Specifically, how deep?
Read allows to read the files, and list folder just shows what's in the folders.
Thank you. So you'll see what's in the bag, but you won't be able to actually open anything to read. You can read what the file name is, but you can't open the file to read what's inside the file. That makes sense? On top of that, read also allows you to see who the owner is and its attributes. So you can actually right click and see what the actual attributes of security are. List folders, you could only view what's in there. You can see what's inside the bag. You can go down into the sub directories, but you can't open any of the candy. Questions? And lastly, we have modify, which be able to combine the read and execute permissions plus write permissions. And it now also allows you to delete the actual folder and everything in it. Here we see the actual users Antonio again, and we still see system and we see administrators, but we'll see here the only thing that's been added to the list is the list folder contents. As for, we need to understand, obviously, when we do it to a file, it specifically is doing it to a file. Here, they're doing it to the folder and everything in it, in that folder. Questions? All right. For our friends, single sign-on. Single sign-on obviously is the authentication, not the authorization, the authentication that gives access to users to applications, systems they need to be able to log on. SSO obviously, what the great thing is, it lives and is able to go into different environments, as we see here, including Kerberos Active Directory, Novell eDirectory, and some certificate models themselves. This is all just from logging into your Windows computer. There are many benefits, obviously, as we stated within the single sign-on feature, including obviously the actual reduces the password fatigue, and it also helps to ensure that whatever you set up as complexity, whatever you want for these passwords, is the same throughout. Saves obviously a lot of time re-entering and to be able to authenticate to any other server that's in this given domain. And obviously, it will reduce the IT costs with the related issues of people wanting to continue to reset passwords because they seem to forget what the old password was. Any questions? Our friend BitLocker, as we stated, that is the whole drive encryption. This tool obviously lets you seal the device all the way up to the boot without it being altered, essentially obviously locking the actual drive itself. Now there's also the cute one, which is BitLocker to go, which provides the exact same type of encryption, and it will obviously help prevent unauthorized access that's on your removable drives. This is one great feature that specifically with all these companies who are so scared of the users going and sticking a USB device. A lot of the companies have at first just forced that no one can actually put a USB, to the point that now obviously Windows wants stuff. They want to join things, and hence BitLocker to go was born. EFS is slightly different. As we stated a moment ago, EFS is the encryption file system. Specifically, you do it to that given folder or file. It will encrypt its actual content. So this is an advanced attribute of a given folder. If we remember, this is in the same spot that we go to check the actual archive bit. The archive bit is the bit that says that I'm ready to be actually backed up. Hence, that when you do a full backup, it unmarks this given full check mark to let the system know if you do a differential backup, or if you're gonna do a, no, I forgot the other name. Anybody want to help me out with the other word of different backup? There's full backup, differential, and
Partial?
the word for real? No, now you mess with me. And hence, ice cream truck here to save me. Go get some ice cream, and I'll see you guys in 5 minutes. So the incremental backup would be the other one. And as we stated before, a full backup will make a complete backup. You don't care what, it will make a backup of what you stated. Obviously, you can set it up to do a full backup of only one folder. You choose what is it that you want. But these are the options when you go into this actual backup. If when you choose a full backup, whatever you chose to do a full backup, it will do a full backup of everything, marked bit or not. As for your incremental backup, it only covers the files that have changed since the last backup was made. Doesn't matter what type of backup, be that it's a full backup or an incremental backup, as long as that archive bit is on, it will make a backup. A differential backup, though, is actually a cumulative backup, as we said. It's the one that actually grabs all the backups, sorry, all the files from the last full backup or last incremental backup if something's changed. It won't change the archive bit. Questions?
No.
Sorry, I have a question about backups. I really don't understand the difference between incremental backup and differential backup. It just sounds very similar to me.
One of them actually turns this little bit off, while the other one leaves it alone. Hence, that when you're going in, sorry, give me a second. Oh, I thought this a little bit. Sorry. Anyways, when you're going in itself, when you do the actual backup, let's say on Sunday you did a complete full backup. Now on Tuesday you did a sorry on Monday you went and did a actual differential backup. It's gonna back up everything from the last time that you did the full backup. So from Sunday until Monday night, everything that's there. Now that he made the backup, he will not touch that bit. Hence, it's acting like if it never got backed up. Now the next day comes in and it's gonna go and do again another differential backup. It will back up everything from Sunday up to Tuesday now. You do another one on Wednesday. Now it's gonna back up everything from Sunday up to Wednesday. And it never touches that archive bit, hence why it keeps on backing up everything from the last time that you did a full backup. Now, the incremental, we're gonna do the same thing. On Sunday, I did a full backup. On Monday, I do a incremental backup. Now, what it's gonna do is gonna back up everything from Sunday till Monday night that has changed. But now it's gonna go and unmark this box. Now that it has unmarked this box, all of the files that have changed from Sunday to Monday have that unchecked box. Now, only the things that have on Tuesday night that have changed from Monday to Tuesday will be backed up. Otherwise, it won't get backed up. Same thing now, Wednesday comes up, only the difference from Tuesday to Wednesday, and then on Thursday, the difference from Wednesday to Thursday. Had it been that it was a differential on Thursday, I would have to back up everything from Monday up to Thursday. Much bigger thing. Any other questions or doubts on the three?
Thank you.
All right. So as we stated, EFS itself is in the same screen here. It's as simple as going and just marking that little checkbox, and it will encrypt that given folder or file that you have chosen. Inside the actual thing for the Windows Vista, as we mentioned before, we have the normal administrator, your standard, and your guest. We want to make sure that the actual administrator, the name administrator is gone, but as for the groups itself, that's allowed. Inside your actual Windows 8, you'll see that in this screen it's a little different. It's not that other GUI representation, but still you can create a local account versus an actual Microsoft account. Obviously, if you do a Microsoft account, it gives you all the features that Microsoft has, including being able to control everything from the cloud versus actual machine. Questions or doubts? Right. Inside the actual family, you'll notice that you have be able to add any family member. This is what's great about using these Windows accounts, because now you created it and you go actually log on to a brand new machine. You can add with ease, add any family member to be able to log on to this machine. Automatically in the little start menu, you'll be able to see that member in the list of that machine and giving them the rights that they usually have. You can obviously specify per PC which one is which, but obviously as for home PC, usually you would be the administrator. Questions?
Does the different names for the users differ from different versions of Windows? Like I see like in Windows, it says Windows 10 Home Edition. Would it be different? Would it have a family and other users for like Windows Enterprise or Windows?
Yeah, you're
like what is
correct.
some-
And this is home. So in other words, add a family member. And instead of this, you would probably be adding them to a domain inside the enterprise. So you would go into the domain server itself, add the user to the domain and or subdomain that they belong to give them the rights to that specific thing. This is obviously to facilitate the process of home addition.
Okay, nice. Thank you.
Mhm. All right, quiz time. Number 1. Which type of user account does Windows 7 support? Choose, please, all that apply.
A and D.
A and D, I'm hearing. Everyone agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Which of the following is not true about user accounts and groups? So,
A, the user account can only belong to one group.
okay, we got one vote for that. Anybody else?
No, wait, maybe it's D.
Okay. We got one half vote for A and a half vote for D. Anybody else want to chime in?
I will go with B.
D? Okay.
Go for A.
All right, we have one and a half, one and a half. 35. Let's
I'm gonna go for D as well.
see. Interesting. Okay. So far we got 2.5 and 1.5. Anybody want to tie it up again, or you just want to make it unanimous?
We'll go for D too.
Okay. Interesting. To say the least, we'll go with that. Continue. To which group does Windows give access to folders that you create, which are not part of your user profile? To which group does Windows give access to folders that you create, which are not part of your specific user's profile?
Power users?
I will go with guest users. Guests.
I think it's authenticated users.
Okay. We have 1, 1, and 1.
I think it's guests B.
Okay. 1, 2, and 1. Anybody else? No? All right.
I think it's A.
A? Okay. Now we got 2 and 2. Now you're killing me.
Because why would you give, like, I don't know, this is how I understand the question. To which group does Windows give access to folders that you create? So I'm pretty sure it's an administrator is creating a folder.
You're assuming there. It's basically saying it's not in your user's profile.
Right.
It's in another place. So it could be in, let's see, maybe in program data. It can be in any folder that's not your folder. Obviously, you were able to create something in there, but it's not your folder. You could be administrator. You cannot be administrator. It doesn't matter, but you seem to have permission to be inside that folder, but it's not yours.
Then guess this.
Do we remember
Would a
what?
guest have access to folders that are not part of the profile?
Not that I'm aware of, unless if you ain't changed something. And the power users seem to have a little bit more. So would everybody all of a sudden, just because I created a folder, automatically have access to this?
No.
No, right?
Right.
This
No.
guy can install stuff. We said that we're giving them, in other words, very close to a programmer's access, coder's access. So the default one we're gonna say for now is guest, and we'll review that. Can't seem to agree. In order to prevent other users from editing files in C: files, which of the following steps should you take?
Set
Which-
the permissions to read only.
Okay, one vote for that.
I agree with that.
We gotta second that motion. We can keep on going. Which of the following Windows features would be used to encrypt a single file or folder?
TFS.
First.
NTFS, yeah.
All right. So let's look into this a little deeper. Okay. Let's look. So as for number one, I think we all agreed the usual ones is either standard and or administrator. Next area that we chose, unfortunately, we chose the actual backup one. The backup operators that's what they are. That's what I'm giving them. It's a group. Therefore, if I don't want to give a task to this person that's not an administrator, but I just want them to be able to do the daily backups, and obviously they're going to be able to restore the data in that area. As long as they're in the backup operators group, that's what it gives you. Next one here, though, the one that they're saying that you can't throw an actual account from one that's in one group into the other. If you remember, part of the auditing process is that since you can do that, you must ensure, do they really still need the rights in that other group? Hence, why I said you wouldn't even take them out of the group. You would verify with their actual management team of their previous actual department when it comes to role-based, to ensure that you do not remove the rights too early, or maybe indeed, maybe the person has to, he's working 80 hours or God only knows. The next area we had is which group give access that you can create, which is not part. And Josh couldn't sell his poor slogan no matter how hard he says. And it is true, authenticated users would be the one that gets created as if you create one that's not on your user's profile, because you are an authenticated user. You're not the owner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just didn't think it was. I thought it was one of those things that was there to throw us off.
Yeah.
I knew it
That was-
because a guest cannot access very much on a computer.
Mhm.
Because I just knew about how that works. But and then authenticated users, that's the one that you allow that to go in and they can access all the files on the computer.
Yeah. Usually
I
that's
didn't
all
think guest either, but I thought power user was something above guest, and I didn't think authenticated user was a thing. I thought it was like anonymous user, so that's why I didn't select it.
Yeah, well, those are both things. They're scary, but they actually exist. Anonymous user could be the worst thing you could actually do. That means they don't even have to authenticate. Everyone means that you need to authenticate everyone that's here. An authenticated user is a user that is already authenticated, but everyone is everyone, every group, everything, even guests. But anonymous is one of the scary ones to ever add. Obviously, that gets done on some certain platforms for stuff, but usually anonymous wouldn't be something that you want to give to everyone to be able to get into a given system. Next one that we had here was in order to prevent users from editing C, then we obviously only set it to read only, and we got the last one, which was the EFS. Any questions or doubts?
So going back to what was it, the authenticated user one? So that was just kind of like meaning like when a group makes a folder, it chooses which users to authenticate so they can like you like see them and use them.
Let's see if it hopefully does it for me here. Can you still see? No, you can't see that. Let's see. Problem is I have admin rights and I'm not in here with. Let's see where I can find another folder that's not mine. So we can see. One of these should be it. Thank you. So let's see what rights are in here. All right, you have everyone, you have your system administrators and users. What they're saying is, and he's only got read and write. When you create something in here, brand new, let's see if I can create something. Would it let me? I should be able to. Oh, I just want to create a brand new file. Can I create a file? Oh, of course, it's not that easy anymore. Oh, here he is. No, it's still folder. What does that mean? Let's go over here. Let's create a text file. Yes, and hopefully it did what we're supposed to do. Obviously, for me, it just added the users instead of authenticated users. Now I remember why. Because I have again forgotten that I have home. The one that they're throwing you at you is in reference to the enterprise one. Authentic users would come out and actually in the enterprise one, not on my one. But you'll notice that it automatically threw all the users in there instead of authenticated users, which is the same thing, users and authenticated users for the domain. Any other question? All right, let's go then to the next slide. So, needle pulling thread, ladies and gentlemen, we have actually getting to the end here. And hopefully at this point, we should be able to define the different types of user accesses that we have reviewed and understand that we need to secure the client's data. It is obviously very essential to keep their data safe as much as we can. We need to use all of the features that Windows has to be able to set the share permission for given drives, files, or folders, and obviously set the different types of groups associated to the types of access that there is, be that it is an administrators group or a power users group, whatever group that they need to be in. Understand the variances between read, write, your modify, your full control, and any other special permissions that you may actually set aside. As for hopefully by now we can understand what single sign-on is. It is a heaven sent for us IT individuals. We're now no longer do the users have to log on to 100 different systems and or applications. They can now just log on to their computer on the domain. And as long as that the authentication of single sign-on is going on to that given application and or that server or resources on the domain, and you have privilege to that, you should be able to authenticate without any issue. Any questions or doubts?